Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down the Dueling Hopper set based on loading array by Kayzm, and today's the part 3 where we'll break down the actual Dueling Hopper unloading section. So let's get straight into it. Now in the previous two videos we covered this part right here, which preps the boxes to get boxes to look like this, and then in this section right here we've created the set so no boxes match the first item in that they are unloading. And that's where we are right now. The box has arrived up this water stream right here, gone all the way up and entered right here. Now for the purpose of this video, what I am going to do is just quickly block this off right here and run the system with this box so all the clocks start, so we can get a better understanding of how the clocks interact with the system. So it will run right here. Then the box will run over here in just a second. There we go, it ran here. Now we have a box placed, or the item in the set. And the system has been starting up. You can see it with all the clocks, like this one right here, this one right here, and all that good stuff. And we have the box up here. Now, so let's get straight into it. Basically, the item will be yeeted up into this water stream and shot against this stone brick wall and go into this hopper right here. Once in this hopper, this will go across into this dropper right here, where this comparator will pick it up. And once this comparator picks it up, it will subtract from this comparator right here, which is taking a readout. And because it has the same value, this will go to 0. Which will power this block right here, or which will actually unpower this block right here, unpowering this repeater, which will unpower this block right here, powering this redstone torch. And this will cause a small instant where this this activator rail line will fire in the instant that this is going to 0 and this still needs to power up. So it causes this observer to only take one input. This is a really nice way to only get one input, this type of way of functioning. And what then this causes is this observer to pick it up, which powers this observer, powering this observer, powering this observer. Now, this observer does something very interesting. Basically what happens is it powers this block right here, which powers this redstone wire right here. This redstone wire right here gets a signal from this redstone block right here. So it powers this wire, but it all has a redstone signal going from 15 on this block all the way to 0 and this block right here with the activator rail. Now, what happens when this block gets powered is it increases all of them by 1 because it sets this to 15 and then you keep going down and following the regular things. So basically it causes all of these to power instantaneously at the same time, which means that this hopper, all items in the dropper will shift 1 over to the right. Now, in this scenario right here, this dropper right here, the item will move into this dropper right here. Now, once in this dropper, this comparator will take a readout and power this dropper, which powers this piston right here. By powering this piston, it shifts this huge chain and redstone block link over 1, where it will unpower this redstone wire. Now, when it is here, it will unpower this redstone wire, which will unpower or unlock this hopper right here, which will allow the shulker box to go into the system and begin sorting. Now, this stays shifted over here to the right, and we'll talk about how that gets shifted back in just a second. Now, what happens then is the box goes into this hopper, it goes down into this hopper, where it gets placed into this dispenser right here. This dispenser has then a readout from this comparator right here, which will detect that there's a box placed and power this block right here, powering this piston, which shifts this redstone line right here. Now, by shifting this redstone block right here, it powers this note block, which will power this dispenser, shooting out the shulker box. But we have a problem. We have an empty space, or we have a slime block in the way right now. So what's gonna happen? So what happens is when this block of redstone right here moves over here, it actually causes a bud powering of this. And a bud powering just basically means a block update detector. So technically this block, or a redstone block right here, is powering this sticky piston right here, which is very weird. But basically when it gets moved over here, it will power this activator rail, which will update the sticky piston to be like, hey, I'm actually not powered, and retract and allow the box to be placed right here. Now, once this has been retracted, or what we can see right here is what happens when this gets retracted right here, is that the box has space now to be placed. And okay, so this is where the dueling hopper actually comes from. This is where the dueling part of the hopper. Basically, these two hoppers are facing into each other, and this hopper is getting powered every once in a while, or basically every other tick, to lock. And what this is doing is basically, when it's unlocked, it pushes the extra shear back into this slot right here. And what happens is then it locks, but this hopper stays unlocked because there's no power coming into it, so it pushes the item immediately back. But when there's a shulker box placed right here, in this interval where it gets shoved over into this hopper, it has a chance to take an item from the shulker box, and this will be the first item in the box. So we have this box right here. What will happen is it'll take the first item out. And this is where it becomes important. Once it takes the first item out, it'll be detected by the system here. How does it do that? Well, when this system is acting like a 5 shear system, which will happen because the swapping of the items is so like such a short interval, the comparator doesn't have time to pick it up because of the interval that the comparator runs in. But what happens is the hopper will no longer technically be full. Right now it's being classified as full, and there's a full signal strength, or a signal strength of 14 coming into this. So it means that this signal right now is more powerful of a signal strength of 1, so it's powering this line right here, which is causing all of this to remain how it is. But as soon as one of these shears gets swapped out for a singular item, or a stackable 16 item, that's where the system falls apart, because, or not the system falls apart, but the system detects that it's no longer a full hopper. So this no longer is more powerful than this wire right here. So it turns off, turning off this wire right here, which powers on this this redstone torch right here, which unpowers this redstone torch right here, which causes this activator rail line to unpower, causing a pulse to this block right here, which pushes this piston, resetting this line of initially to be the same, or to be like as it was initially. And at the same time, let me find it, this observer detects that this line is powered off, so it pulses, which pulses this repeater right here, or no, this activator rail, which pulses this piston to push all of this line right here to reset it. Now at the same time, there's also a line right here, this line right here with the redstone signal of 1 because of the comparator. And when this turns off, this will go to 0, and it will power this, or unpower this repeater right here, unlocking this hopper right here. Okay, so the items start to make their way down, but there's one more signal that we have to consider right here, and it's this signal right here, where this redstone wire unpowers. It will also unpower this redstone lamp, which will unpower this line, or which will activate this observer and this observer. Now this does two things. The first thing that it does is pulses this repeater right here, which will actually lock this hopper right here, which is important for a reasons that we'll talk about when we come to the finishing of the box. And it will also pulse this observer line right here, which will pulse this dropper. Now for the startup of the system, it doesn't matter because the items have not had enough time to come down to this dropper, so no items get sped out, so don't worry about that. This is important for the unrunning of the system, or the desets, or taking the item out of the set once the box is finished sorting that item. Now, the items will start making their way down into, or they make their way down into this dropper right here, and then they continue their way down into this line right here, this hopper right here, which then pushes them into this dropper right here. This dropper has a item count of 40 in the bottom right. This is for powering this comparator right here, which powers this line right here. Now, this is only important as a failsafe, because the item count required to get a higher signal strength of 1 is 42. So basically when you're running your items into here, it will only go up to 41 it will only go up to 41 because the hopper underneath it will always be pulling it out. This is a failsafe in case the entire system backs up or something. Now what will happen if this backs up is this goes to 42 and this comparator notices that, which will cause this line right here to overpower this wire, to power onto this wire, unpowering this redstone torch right here, which will unpower this block right here, and that will cause this or a few things to happen over here with this piston and push this block right here, and then this line right here won't be able to fire, and it'll basically lock up this entire module. But that's not too important. That's only like a fail-safe worst case scenario type of thing. Now what happens is, and yeah, so that's an absolute worst case scenario. Now what also happens is they will be pulled down into this hopper right here, and you might say, but wait, this hopper right now is locked through this repeater right here. This repeater, and that's because when the system gets items into this hopper right here, it will power this comparator, which will unpower this redstone torch, unpowering this line, allowing these two hoppers right here to unlock. This is done just for lag reasons, because the more hoppers you can lock, the better, because it's less on your game to process. This is also how the system locks, but we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. Now that this is unlocked, the items can nicely flow down all the way down into this dropper right here. This dropper right here is where all the items get unloaded. Basically, this observer, as you can see right here, right now, you can see the flashing lights. It's pulsing, coming all the way from this clock right here, which we talked about in yesterday's video. And this is what controls the items coming out of the dropper. It basically pulses. Now, every once in a while, there will be a pulse that comes across this second observer line right here. There is two observer lines here right now. This one right here is just to pulse all of these pistons to clear out any of these blue concretes that will happen when worst case scenarios happen, and a few other cases, but that's not too important. But the main one is this second observer right here. What happens is this clock is, not that clock, this clock right here is constantly powering, and it will constantly pulse this dropper right here, and these droppers are sorting between 6 items, and this is how the system keeps track. And basically what happens is it powers these droppers, which are locking these hoppers, and until all of these right here, or it goes all the way to here, you'll see that the item gets shifted to this hopper, which will power this comparator, which will unpower this redstone torch, which will cause a pulse to go all the way up these observer spaghetti and flip the item to go into the dropper here or away from it, which will cause a pulse down to go to this line. And this will open the trapdoor and open this trapdoor right here. By what it does is it, get a good angle, it will pulse and it will power this blocker or this observer right here, which will power through this blue concrete, which will power, and it will send a pulse to this activator rail line right here by powering through this blue concrete. Now what will happen is this observer will detect it and power, and this will get observed by the next observer right here, which will power the observer powering the repeater, which will power the block, and that will power the iron trap door that's right there next to it. And so it causes the one next to it to, or not the one next to it, but the one to fire because of the module. So if I go back to here, this line will fire, so it'll cause this to unload. Now by opening, just like you saw there, all the items will drop out and be pushed out because of the way Minecraft water physics work. Because there's air here blocked by the ladder, it pushes the items into here. These will go all the way down into this right here and be held here. And every once in a while, as you just saw, this piston will push them and move them all the way down here and through here. And the reason we have a slab here is to batch to collect all the items of the same item. So for example, if you have the other redstone, by being pushed into the slab and held here, it groups them all into the same entity on the floor, which makes it easier for hoppers to pick up, so we don't have any chance of running over the cooldown. Now, going back to this counter right here, wait, where is it? I'll find it here. This counter right here, it runs a counter of 6. Now, this is because every 6, for every single one this runs, it fires 10 full stackables and some other number I can't remember for the 16 stackables. And that basically means that this trapdoor will be released every 6 intervals, which is 60 of the 64 stackables and some number I can't remember for the 16 stackables. Okay, so basically it'll run and it will release it at 10 of the 16 stackables. I just remembered. Now, that will release it. Now what happens when the system runs out of items? This is where the nature of the dueling hopper again comes in handy. Basically, because this item is being thrown back and forth every so often, or every X amount of game ticks from the repeater coming here, there will be a second where the redstone will run out and the shears will pop back into the hopper before because of the way that this hopper locks and this hopper doesn't. They will lock as the item gets pulled out, and this hopper right here, because it's locked, it can't pull another item, so this hopper will push the shears into the hopper. Now this will cause the comparator right here to lock up as everything and lock up the entire slice, and it will push this, breaking the box, which will send it down this line right here to recycle the box and go through the full system again. If there's any items, it will go through the box, and if there's no items, it will get popped out right here to where the empty boxes are. And we covered the prep and the set selection in the last 2 videos, if you're curious about that. Now, what will happen is it will actually use the last item. It will use the same system that we talked about before of this lamp getting updated and firing a signal, because the last item will be about in this dropper when this signal fires, and it will lock the hopper underneath it and power the dropper, shooting out the item. Now once it shoots out the item, it goes all the way across here, and I blocked it up for testing purposes, but it will go into this hopper right here. And this, if you remember from yesterday's video, is the set unassigning hopper. So it'll run through here and unassign the redstone or whatever item you have from the set. So now that item can now be filtered again if there's more boxes with that item in it. That's the process for running an entire, or emptying an entire shulker box. Now, how does the system know if there is, or how to process another box in the next slice? Well, let's just run through the imaginary scenario. So the box will be placed into this hopper right here, and it will be pushed into this dropper right here. Now, the same signal as we talked about at the very beginning of the video will play out, and it will power all of these observers right here. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that the redstone block next to it actually powers the dropper right here. So it stops the signal. So basically this signal will never power that's coming from this observer right here. And that basically means for this observer, it got powered the first one and moved over here. But now this this dropper is now unlocked or not powered because there's no redstone block next to it. So it will it's able to get powered by this observer and go through and go into the next dropper. And now because this one is powered, any power coming to it won't cause it to trigger again, pushing it into the next slice. And so it will stay in this observer dropper and be able to go down and do the same process as before. Now, the reason it doesn't get pulled into this hopper is because the timing of this observer causes the signal to be almost instantaneous. Now, what will happen here is when this system relocks up, it will send another pulse to this and basically pulse this piston here through the activator rail line we talked about at the beginning, and it will power this block or move this entire slice over and reopen the slice by locking the neighboring line. Because what happens is when this gets powered, when this activator rail gets powered, it powers this block right here, which powers this gray concrete right here, which pulses the piston. Now, how this system locks. Basically, there is one locking switch right here. This does a lot of signals, but basically the one signal, we'll just break this down signal by signal. So when you pause it, it will power this repeater right here, which will lock these 2 hoppers. So any inputs coming from this large chest will stop immediately. And that's it for this signal, but it does loop around. And basically what happens is it will power this redstone torch, which will unpower this redstone wire right here, which will power this line right here, because this torch is now ready or powered because it's no longer getting power from here. And this will run a redstone pulse extender to make sure that basically if you just flick it, it controls the output. And what will happen is it'll power this line right here, which will cause this line up here to be permanently powered through this redstone torch right here, which stops any new systems from getting run into the, or any new boxes from getting cycled through. So basically you have about 9 plus 5, so 14 boxes that can be stored temporarily while the system is in pause mode, but it should never run that long because of the amount of temp, or the amount that can run into the system, which is kind of unrealistic. Now what also happens is this redstone wire right here causes these two right here to unpower, which will cause this redstone torch or this sticky piston to retract, and this will prevent any signals from going to this activator rail line right here, which we talked about in the yesterday's video, the video about the prepping. So it stops any signals from running the system at all. Now by unpowering this line, it powers this, which locks this signal right here, causing all of the clocks to lock, because this is the clock system that runs all the individual clocks. Now what also happens is it causes this line up here to power, or no, there is also a worst case scenario line right here, which basically pauses any input of new boxes into the system if any of these boxes right here, which store previously, or boxes that are waiting to be sorted, exceeds the limit of a single chest. And how that works is by this, or exceeds this amount actually of shulker boxes in the chest. And how that happens is because of this comparator will be strong enough to turn the signal to 0, which will power this redstone torch, which will power this line and power the same signal right here, locking the input. But it does not lock all the clocks because you want the clocks to run. And yeah, there's a few more things, like if the signal were to stop, it will power this comparator or composter right here to power all of this line right here. And it's just a few more lines like that, or mainly this line right here, because what will happen is it'll run all of these lines right here, and it'll power this redstone dust as well, which will power this repeater, which will lock this dropper, which stops any items from getting shot out, as well as powering all of these sticky pistons that push the composters to power these comparators to lock this block, which is responsible for this hopper right here and this dropper right here. And there's a few more lines like this one right here, which runs this line, and it comes from this redstone torch. So if this goes to 0, it'll power, and it will power this line right here, which pushes all of these, or not, it doesn't push all of those pistons. It turns off all of these redstone torches, which will turn on all of these redstone torches, so it'll stop all the hoppers running into these lines right here. And just looking for any more lines like that. There's one more line right here, which comes from this line right here, which powers this line, which powers these repeaters, which lock this hopper right here, and I believe also this hopper. So it does get majorly hopper locked when you turn off the system. Now, one thing is there is a timer that, or this signal does run a little bit longer after you pause it, because as with most systems, it has a pause time, but this system is special because the way you continue the pause is so that way any items in this trapdoor get released, as you saw that right there with the trapdoor powering. It runs the timer long enough so that way, because even if this dropper stops powering, if there's still items on this trapdoor, you don't want them to despawn. So it has to run the system long enough until the iron trapdoors open one more time, allowing all the last items to run through the system. Now, the reason I like this system so much is because a lot of systems, when they lock, they power all of their boxes and eject all of the boxes, sending them to the system to be run again when the system starts again. And I don't really like that, because that is just kind of a nightmare, especially if you log on and off a lot. You want to just be able for the system to pick back up where it was. And by keeping that, it makes it a lot simpler on the machine. So overall, this is an amazing piece of redstone technology right here, and it uses so many great principles of not only redstone but also storage tech. And yeah, I think it's really great, and it's the heart of any redstone sorting system that you want to do if you want it to run over 1x hopper speed, which I'm sure if you're interested in storage tech you want to do. So overall, really great system. And yeah, thank you for watching.